Hey everyone, Sleepy Reader here with some comic book thoughts. I actually filmed the main part of this last night. Talked about this pretty good stack of comics that I got around to reading over the Thanksgiving break. I think almost all stuff I bought that Wednesday. And but then I looked over it and there was part I decided to clip out. And what I clipped out was, let's see if I can find it, was where I talked about Savage Dragon, because I showed quite a bit of the part that might be offensive. And I kind of commented on, how something like that would probably not occur to an artist to put into a comic book before the age of disturbing internet porn. And in the context of the story, it was consensual sex, but if you look at just the pictures, you might feel like you're seeing a pretty yucky rape scene. And the tragic part for me is that my daughter picked up this comic and thumbed through it before I even took a look. And up to this point, I was sort of thinking of Savage Dragon as something that has nudity in it, which, while my daughter does not seek that out and I don't seek out to show it to her, I have no problem with her seeing nudity. But this was at a very different level, and I feel kind of horrible that she saw it. And I'm questioning myself and my own comic book buying habits. It was fairly innocuous cover, or completely innocuous cover. It was just sitting in a stack of comics that I left lying around on a table. So it was actually a pretty cool issue, other than that. And maybe what goes on here is fine. But it was interesting that earlier in the comic, one of the characters was talking about internet porn and how it ruined men for real sex and that kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know whether to keep getting this comic or not. And I guess I need to up my game on keeping comic books out of my daughter's hands. If they're in trades or even digital, she's much less likely to pick them up and just flip through them. So anyway, on with the rest of the comic book reviews. Sorry for the choppiness this created. I did have a good week of comic book reading, even though at the moment I feel kind of down on comics just because of this. My own stupidity and my own whatever choices foolishly made around my daughter. So talk to you all later. Or I should say, on with the reviews. Kamandi Challenge number 11 was not a disappointment, just because I wasn't expecting it to be very good. I guess this late in a game that has, this challenge game that has produced ever lowering expectations, this one did as well as I might have expected at this point. I did think that the artwork by Walt Simonson was a nice highlight. It was nicely colored by Laura Martin. I thought it had some cool moments. I think Simonson doesn't do a lot with Kamandi's face, but I love the layouts and a lot of the inking and figure work, or just design work within the panels and everything was cool. So yeah, it was kind of a Kamandi series that had been drawn by Walt Simonson would be a very cool thing. We're taken from another cliffhanger to another pointless cliffhanger. I guess it will all be wrapped up in the next issue. I hope there's a good artist on it, but yeah, this has kind of proven that doing this kind of round robin for 12 issues is a bad idea. I think six issues is all you should do this kind of challenge by. Of course, they wanted to give everyone that they were pals with or whatever, whoever wanted a crack at Kamandi, give them a crack at Kamandi. And that's understandable, I suppose. But I don't recommend this to trade to anyone. There's a few issues, like the Tom King issue, which was 2 issues ago, so I guess number 9, that might be worth just reading on its own. But ooh, how are they going to get out of this one? Since they haven't gotten out of any of them in a particularly clever way, I don't expect anything great next issue. Kamandi's free falling in space. I did enjoy seeing this callback to the old Kamandi map. And like I said, I enjoyed plenty of the Simonson artwork. This is actually a pretty cool cover too. It's not by Simonson. They always have the covers by someone else. What does it say? Nick Bradshaw did the cover. So I need to find out more about this Nick Bradshaw guy. I guess I haven't seen many of his comics. The other kind of downer of the month's reading was, or not the week's reading, was this issue of Hellblazer. I had hopes that maybe Richard Kadrey would know what he's doing with Hellblazer, but clearly he doesn't. All he's got is, it's a supernatural detective story. So he set a supernatural detective story in his backyard. I think he's kind of an LA writer. So he set it in San Francisco and kind of goofs on San Francisco a little bit, but not in a very clever way. The art was okay, but didn't add a whole lot, I guess. And I liked it better, though, than the art of the last few issues. But it was just, yeah, it was just there. It was an okay mystery story if you weren't expecting a Hellblazer story. But I see from solicits that soon Tim Seeley will be back. And I think I'm going to stick with it because I thought that in the Tim Seeley 3-issue thing, by the 3rd issue, I could see where he would like to go with Hellblazer a bit, and I'm curious to see if he plays with that some more. So anyway, I guess this will be a 3-issue arc, and I guess I might as well just read it all. Exo Man of War was a bit of a disappointment. It was still a good read, but we had the inevitable being an emperor of this alien world does not work out well for Exo or for Arik, in that he can't seem to make peace, he can't seem to make things work. The economy is falling apart, people are starving, new wars are breaking out everywhere. But it just seemed like, okay, this is what we have to do this issue, so let's do it. Let's make it happen. It didn't feel like a particularly fun or exciting read. And the artwork, it seems like with each issue, this Clayton Crane artwork gets more and more sort of looking like a Photoshop video game kind of artwork. And I'm not that into it. Next issue, bounty hunters are coming after him, and I think the artist we've had before, where did I see the name of the artist? Some ad here. So I think I'm going to like the art better. This has been kind of a diminishing returns as the series has gone on, but maybe it'll. Renato Guedes, I remember liking his art quite a bit. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I guess there's 3 more issues to go in this kind of maxi series about Exo Man of War. So I'm just not sure what to think. I don't know why this cover shows him being crucified on some kind of alien plant or something, because nothing at all like this scene happens inside. A pleasant surprise was this comic that I just, on a whim, decided to put on my pull list from Alterna Comics that does these $1.50 newsprint comics, or I'm told newsprint doesn't really exist anymore, so it's paper that's similar to newsprint, let's say. And this it's called Doppelganger. It has this horrible cover. I was even afraid looking at the cover. Is this supposed to be about Donald Trump or something? But the artwork inside is pretty pleasing. The writing is very good. It really evokes what modern life might be like for certain people. Not too far off, I suppose, from my own office experiences. Not exactly the same, but the only awkwardness is how they develop the idea that he has a doppelganger. I just felt like there should be some better way to bring the idea of the doppelganger into it. But apparently this mystical being has created a doppelganger of his body and is going to take his place in, 36 hours that he has left to live. And if the two of them appear in the same place, anyone who sees them gets turned to dust, apparently. That wasn't explained the most perfectly either. But anyway, I found it a very fun read, a good kind of grown-up comic, not about sex or anything, but about life and work. So I thought it was good, and I'm happy I jumped on it, and I'm looking forward to the next 3 issues. Sherlock Frankenstein and the Legion of Evil, issue 2, continued to be what I expected it to be from issue 1. After reading issue 1, I realized this is not going to be a comic about Sherlock Frankenstein. It's going to be about a comic where each issue we meet a different weird supervillain or two, and we get Jeff Lemire kind of showing off all the stuff he's invented. And so this issue focuses on Cthulhu, and later his daughter Cthulhuise, a plumber who got taken over by Cthulhu, but doesn't really want to be a villain. And it was a fun read, it was entertaining, lots of cool visuals. It doesn't have the same vibe for whatever reason as Black Hammer itself does, even though it's part of Black Hammer's world, and it's written by Jeff Lemire. But, so it's non-essential reading for the Black Hammer fan, but it's still kind of cool and kind of fun. So I'm glad I read it, and I look forward to whatever Lemire is going to do next. And then, okay, this was my big surprise of the week. I did not have this on my pull. It was on the shelves, so I grabbed it, thinking I'll probably just read 1 issue and say that's enough. But I thought this was an extremely good horror comic. It doesn't much evoke anything like a Jack Kirby story, but the characters are true enough. And it uses the characters in what, I already said it, a very good horror story, judging by this first issue. And it's just got all these different pieces in it, all of which contribute to this sense of dread and horror. And so yeah, it's a really good sort of psychological fantasia. Up to and including a nuclear warhead. So got a lot of different things to be horrified here. And we get Lady Xanadu, is that her name? Lady Xanadu, as part of the mix too. So I'm really excited to get issue number 2. I think it's a 6-issue series. I'm really glad, I really appreciate that DC's doing it for $2.99. What does it say there? Yeah, 1 of 6. So this one goes on my poll. Doom Patrol was a blast, as it seems to always be. Love the Nick Darrington art and the coloring by Tamara Bonvillain. Nick Fowler did the inks this issue. I think normally Darrington does his own inks. I'm not sure if I'm remembering that correctly. So it was full of inventiveness and cleverness, but I couldn't really remember what happened in the previous issue, and it says this is part 2. So that says something about part 2 of Nada, something about the way this is written that I couldn't quite remember. So hopefully I will remember all the stuff that happened in this issue for the next issue. Maybe it had a lot of time gone by. I really love so apparently there was a Dada, what was it called? Because I never read the Grant Morrison version, or not, well, I did read a few issues of it at the time it came out. The Brotherhood of Dada, but now it's the Brotherhood of Nada. And it just seems a lot of fun. No feeling, no hiding, no pants, no problem. Yeah, so this continues to be excellent. Maybe I should be reading it in trade so I remember what happened in the previous issue. I'm not sure. And this is, I believe, this guy who's joined the Brotherhood of Nada is the son of one of the ambulance drivers. So it's all kind of interconnected in a nice way there. And before I talk about now, also deceptive. My daughter even pointed out to me, "Oh, I liked that back cover though, but the rest made me feel sick looking at it." This cover actually, it's not meant to make you feel sick. I don't know. I don't know. I find this cover repellent. And if I hadn't known that this was the new anthology from Fantagraphics, I wouldn't have picked it up based on the cover. But I glanced at a few of the strips and I read the intro and I was really excited about the idea of an anthology, an inherent force for good, giving cartoonists a venue to publish work regularly and quickly and have it printed as beautifully as possible in a platform that encourages productivity, experimentation, and creative freedom. So I read that and I thought, man, I've got to put this on my poll and really support this. But as I read it, the more I read, the less interested I became. Most of these just felt kind of stretched out with very little to say, filling up a lot of the little of the page, or giving very, very ungenerous to the reader often, or just not having that much of a story to tell. This one might be kind of an exception. I'm going to skip over that because it shows childbirth. And this one-page thing was kind of amusing. But like this one, SOS Suitcases, you just couldn't even, there was nothing to get into. There was nothing to care about. There was nothing very funny in it. The storytelling, if you ask me, is a mess. The way the pages are laid out and everything is not as clever or fun as they think. Then there was this long autobiographical piece by Ethan Van Sciver, which was pretty dull, even though it had sex in it and fame. And obviously he's kind of showing off that he came back to town as a famous artist, but also trying to prove he's humble because his relatives are crap. But all he does is really put down his relatives. And then he goes through a little song and dance about feeling guilty about not treating his brother well. And then it turns again, and his brother is proved to be a little piece of crap anyway. So I don't know. There's a whole problem for me for, like, if I were to do autobiographical comics, about how to portray other people. And certainly, I guess Ethan Van Sciver has no problem portraying other people very negatively, particularly his brother, his younger brother. This is not... I've been calling him Ethan Van Sciver. This is Noah Van Sciver. It's not his brother, Ethan Van Sciver, that he's talking about. Part of the problem here is you don't know as you plunge in who you're reading. You have to go all the way back to the table of contents and figure it out. But it was Noah Van Sciver, and he's talking about his brother. Now I've forgotten the name of his brother. But anyway, he's talking about his younger brother, who's not Ethan Van Sciver. So there's nothing about Ethan Van Sciver in here. And then here's another example. This is something, I guess because I'm so uncool, I couldn't even tell if these were males or females anyway. And apparently, by the end of the comic, I realized they're supposed to be transsexuals. And they're busy, they go shopping, or I guess trying on clothing, while giving their personal histories to each other. I just thought it was not making good use of the medium in any way. And you also get these kinds of things where you think it's probably just the artist doing a bunch of pictures they want to do and then pretending there's some kind of story going on here. So yeah, I feel like a Philistine. I don't appreciate this high art. And I feel like I once did, that I liked Raw magazine back when that came out in the 80s. I liked I liked the work of Harvey Pekar, Off the Streets of Cleveland, and I liked Love and Rockets, and I liked, suddenly his name is... The guy who wrote Paying for It, Chester Brown. I liked him all along, and I've liked other people, but I don't see anything here like that is giving me very much, that is very rich. despite all the autobiography and confession. This one was a weird one. It was called Widening Horizon, A Short History of Spaceflight. And I looked at it and I go, this is just paragraphs about spaceflight and illustrations, and very kind of mechanical looking illustrations of that. And I didn't read it at first, and then I was flipping through it and I saw something about the first landing on the moon being China in 1960. And then I went back and tried to read a lot of it, and it's an alternate history where World War II was less intense, and the Russians decided not to build nuclear warheads, and everyone became allies, and the space travel happened earlier. And so for a while that carried me through it was very hard to spot the differences, because I don't know, I know quite a bit about space travel and history, but there was just a lot of details here that I don't know. And since it was done in such a dry way, it was still kind of boring. So I have not finished reading this yet. I might go back and read this last section. But is this really comics? It's like it's almost like they're trading cards. Each one has a picture and and the history of 1 year in the history of flight or history of space travel. But still, it's an evocative, interesting idea, and it looks like it ends in a different manner. But a lot of it was making me think this is not using comics. This is not using what comics can do. And then this last one, kind of as I read it, I thought, oh, maybe this is like some weird, surreal Mobius story. But Mobius would have used good storytelling techniques visually, and I would have understood what was going on and seen something of the weirdness. I wouldn't have been able to figure it all out, but I would have been able to track it, and I would have been able to kind of go back and try to get more out of it. And maybe after I'd read other Mobius stories, come back to it and get more out of it. Sometimes I couldn't even tell if I was supposed to be reading across the page or down the page. There might have been something good going on here, but I never figured it out. So yeah, I'm pretty down on Now. It only costs, it's a nice package for $10. I mean, it's a whole book, basically. And I don't know, I want it to be good. I want to like things other than just mainstream comics. But I don't know. Is it just the wrong random sampling of underground, the alternative press at the moment, or is the alternative press turning into something kind of like poetry has turned into, where it's mostly such personal stuff and so much based on knowing each other's poetry that to the outsiders, most of modern poetry is impenetrable? Or is it just dull? Have they just, so worried about not being commercial that they've just made themselves totally dull and have, avoid actually having to say anything? I don't know. But all in all, even the exploring of Now, even though I didn't like it, was interesting. And all in all, I had a week where I felt, oh, it's fun to read comics. So that's cool. I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.